on the like bad movie thing, I think there's like this weird like subset of culture where they watch M Night movies to like laugh and like they're like so bad it's good movies, which I think is like Bizarro Land.
That's great. No, people talk about some of my favorite M Night movies like that.
Right.
And that's like
Yeah,
movies
complete
in
banana
general.
shit to
They
me.
talk about it shit like it's like epic movie or something.
Yeah. They talk
Which
about it like
is-
they talk about M Night like he's fucking Tommy Wiseau. Like what
Yeah,
the fuck are we
which
like? What are we
is-
doing
Neil
here?
Breen.
Like
You're
Kind of
yeah,
segueing
like Neil
perfectly
Breen.
into the next movie. Like,
Yeah, The Happening.
Yeah.
Happening's a good
Oh.
fucking movie. The Happening is a good
not even just a
fucking
good
movie.
a great,
It's a great movie.
This is
All-timer.
I don't care as much about defending Lady in the Water, but The Happening, I'm like, just because Lady in the Water doesn't connect with me as much, but like The Happening, when I rewatched it yesterday, I was like, it blows my mind that people think this is like a garbage movie.
Are
Like
we
if
on
you
The
just think
Happening
it's
now?
if you think it's
Yeah,
okay,
we're on The Happening now.
yeah.
Oh shit.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
If you think it's okay, whatever, I could deal with it. I find
so,
it so hard. Like when I rewatch The Happening, and maybe it's just because I've seen it like 4 or 5 times now, so I've gotten used to it. But like when I hear somebody just say that this is like one of the worst movies they've ever seen, I'm like, that is crazy to me.
Cuckoo Bananas Land.
Yeah, so for me,
Okay, go for it,
The
George.
Happening is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I
That's
think
crazy.
I frequently rank The Last Airbender and The Happening as like the 2 worst movies I've ever seen.
Do you have
The
this
la-
at a half star?
Yeah, The Last
Break that down for
Airbender.
me.
The Last Airbender, I will admittedly like. That's just mainly because of my love for the TV show, and I think that movie absolutely shits on it. So I know that movie's not maybe a half a star worthy, but for what it did to the TV show, it's just absolute ass. My thing with M. Night is, just to take you back, I think Tommy, Doug, you mentioned Tommy Wiseau.
Yeah.
I did not mean to call you Tommy. That was not an insult or anything. But yeah, you guys talk about M. Night like, he cares about his ideas. He cares about, being this, romantic. He cares about, being very personal in his scripts. And while it can come off a little, spoofy, I think, to a casual moviegoer who's not necessarily looking at his ideas or looking at, how personal he is within this film, how much of him is instilled in this film. A lot of people are looking at this like, okay, well, all of that came off, maybe a little bit spoofy to me, because to a casual moviegoer who's not necessarily focusing on, exactly what these characters are saying, the dialogue or the deep themes of the movie, they're sitting there watching, Paul Giamatti overact his ass off, which can come off a little comical. They're sitting there watching Bryce Dallas Howard kind of come off childish, which, yes, it's intended, but it can come off a little spoofy at times. And then same thing with Joaquin's performance in The Village. While it is awesome, and I do think he's one of the shining lights of that movie, to a lot of people, coupling that performance with that odd dialogue style is going to come off a little spoofy to them. And The Happening, to me, is a culmination of everything I hate about M. Night as a filmmaker.
But
It is as obnoxious as possible. I get what he's trying to say about, environmental issues and all that jazz. It just comes off so cringe to me. And this is the most, what did I literally just say about Twitter discourse? This is the most he makes bad movies on purpose type of M. Night movie, where I feel like he genuinely tried to make a bad movie because he thought it would come off intelligent, or he thought it would have more weight on these themes that he's trying to, vocalize to the public. But to me, it just comes off so disgustingly ass. Mark Wahlberg giving not arguably, the worst performance of his career.
that's crazy.
Maybe
That's
one of the
crazy.
worst.
Have you
performances.
seen? It might.
What?
It's one of his better ones, bro. Have you seen fucking?
I'd argue that Addison Rae and He's All That gave a better performance than Mark Wahlberg in The Happening.
I mean,
We could start Addison Rae discourse if you want, but
yeah. I mean, we're fans of Addison Rae over here on our podcast. Addison Rae, friend of the pod, come on the show.
I think it's a little among all of those critiques. I think what stood out to me is you saying that it's not very intelligent, because one of my big takeaways, what makes up a lot of my favorite movies, is just like very strong political movies. I don't think there are many filmmakers who could pull off a movie with this good of political commentary. I think it is
It's
rich
actually
with political commentary in
crazy.
several ways.
Yeah.
Especially when you look at this movie as obviously the environmentalism stuff you mentioned. And I think that's a really cool idea. I think it's cool that it's the environment fighting back against people, like the environment killing people after everything we've done to the planet. But I think more specifically, when you look at it as a post 9/11 movie, it is just one of the best examples of capturing the hysteria, the response to how news spreads across the country in a post 9/11 world that we've ever seen on film. It's people seeing anything that scares them and calling it terrorism, which is very much what America looked like post 9/11. It's news spreading faster than the virus does. It's people hearing about what's happening in one part of the country before the contaminated air even gets there, and then the mass hysteria that happens as a result of it. And it's one of those things that, because of what our political landscape in America looks like in the modern day, is going to apply to every post 9/11 situation. Like, you could watch this as a COVID movie and it works entirely. So I just think, the other critiques, it's like, if that's how you feel, that's how you feel. But I think this is a really intelligent movie. I think that few people could have this kind of political commentary in a movie and nail it this much.
Yeah, I mean, The Happening, straight up, I think is the best recreation of 9/11 in cinema. Like the opening scene where all the people die in like by Central Park in New York at the beginning of the movie, right? Like, and then like have that cut to Mark Wahlberg in the school, and then have like, oh, like something's happening in New York in the school. I think that no other filmmaker has recreated 9/11 as powerfully, not as powerfully, but like as specifically, and as like with so much couth, as M. Night did in this, in The Happening. It's so, like, rewatching the movie for the first time in years. I was like, yesterday, this is the only movie I watched to prep for this podcast. Yesterday, I was like, oh my God, I was like, holy shit. And like, the whole thing is also, it's about like, it's like this crazy commentary on like 9/11 and the Iraq War, and like in a way, because people always talk about the environmental stuff, and I was like, bro, this movie's about the Iraq War, and I'm like, this is crazy. This is fucking crazy what he's doing here in fucking 2008, saying that America deserved 9/11, and like this in like this really insane like couth, like saying the quiet part. It's like whispering the quiet part, and it's like,
I mean, you saw my review already, and like I pointed out the line. There's a line where Kendall Roy, when you texted us, you said Kendall Roy, where Kendall Roy shows up as a like someone in the army, and one of the characters is like, oh, it's the army, we're safe, which is like, I mean, that it is like kind of like these are like these two clashing ideas that the movie presents so well, which is like that, like, Americans thinking that the army is a sign of safety, while everything else in the movie is just fear-based. Like, there's just so, like, this whole movie revolves around fear and how we respond to it, and to think that, like, M. Night, back in 2008, when it wasn't as popular to kind of diss the military, he just went ahead and did that, and was like, you guys love the military, but you're scared of all this other stuff. It's just really fascinating.
And I'll also point out that stuff's all cool, but we're fucking nerds and most people don't give a shit.
Right.
But then it's also like even the performances, Zoe Deschanel, I like her performance a lot in this movie.
I do, yeah.
I think that she captures having anxiety and being like an anxious person. I think that she communicates that to the audience very, very well. I think it's like,
she literally reminds me of myself when I'm having a panic attack. Like several moments, I'm like, this is just normal to me.
She is a top tier, like maybe like top 6 M. Night performance. I think she's phenomenal in that movie. I called this movie proto old in my review, but I think it's just more of a natural progression of his dialogue and the way that he writes his characters. I think I called it absurdity matching absurdity. I think you talked about Lady in the Water. I think that's, I don't know what you would call it, but fairy tale kind of dialect matching fairy tale world. I think there is a very interesting thing that he taps into here with the dialogue. But I also would just say that this movie is so visually strong that I think you'd have to be a blind man to
The
call this one
shot,
of the worst movies of all time.
the shot.
I can't see anything, bro. I can't
No,
see a
bro,
thing.
George, the shot in this movie, right, where it's like, it's not New York, I think it's in Philadelphia when this virus hits Philadelphia,
car?
right, and it's like the guy, it's the policeman in the car.
Yeah.
The policeman
Yeah.
shoots himself in the head. The gun drops. The guy gets the hold on the gun.
Camera,
The guy
yeah.
gets out of the car,
Yeah,
picks up the gun, shoots himself. The gun drops. Camera pivots. Somebody walks over from the sidewalk to pick up the gun. That shit is crazy. That shit's crazy.
Yeah, I think
That seems so good.
like it's like I don't even think this is one of those movies where it's so like well shot, but I think the way that the happening works because everything else is so strong as well. But I just don't see how it can be like a 2.0 or something when it is
And-
shot this well.
It has a 1.99 average on Letterboxd.
Okay,
Kind
yeah.
of criminal.
I think we've lost our way,
too
and so
high.
and I think we've lost our way. I don't think we really have a grand understanding of the visual medium.
No,
Because
people are
I-
watching movies like Bryce Dallas
because
Howard in
I
The
think
Village, bro.
what is like, yeah, I don't know, because any Netflix movie that will come out with just that looks like garbage.
Heart of
like
Stone
a-
probably has a higher fucking average
like
than
a
this shit.
2.5 at least. I just don't believe it. I don't think it is. I don't think most of it is really genuine.
And
I just
we always talk about. Sorry, I'm sorry, Owen. We always
No,
talk
you're
about. We always talk about M Night's like style being like unnatural and like it feels weird and stuff. It's like he made a whole movie where he uses that as like a strength, where he uses that as like a thematic element, because it's like another thing that stuck out to me when we were watching it. I was like, oh, like everything feels fucking fake on purpose. Like instantly from the very first second of the movie, we're like, oh, this isn't real life, you know? And it's
Yeah.
like he's using that because it's like, you know what happens? Like when the happening happens, real life doesn't feel real anymore, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
well,
It's cool.
I think when we talk about like bad movies on purpose, I think it also not also. I think we're talking about, and well, I'm not saying bad movies on purpose, but I think the more like it kind of gets telephoned into like translated into the wrong thing. I think it is stilted and absurdity most of the time, and not bad. I think going back to the painting, I think it is anti-realism, and I think it is just absurdity. But I think what Doug was saying, I think when things are weird in real life and when things are not normal, like that's just like I don't know. I think it's the perfect portrait of like real life disaster. I think this is like an ultimate disaster movie in terms of like just feeling weird. Yeah, I think Mark Wahlberg's great. I think this movie is incredibly sad. I think this is probably M. Night at his saddest. I think it is almost, we talk about proto knock at the cabin when we're talking about disaster movies and the end of the world. I think that is something that M. Night fears. You talk about family. There's this great sense of like, these are the people I need to protect, and what is going to happen if the world is ending and I don't know what to do and I need to protect these people. I don't know. It's one of those funny movies where it's like people will put this on just to laugh, and I think this movie makes me cry more than it does make me laugh.
Can
I think this movie
It is a little silly
depressing.
also.
It is
Can
silly.
I-
I think there's movies that it's weird. It has a great balance of it. I think there's tons of scenes where I'm laughing because Mark Wahlberg is phenomenal in this movie. I think he's really funny in this movie. But I think it's also I think this movie is just very sad. Like two kids get shotgunned like point blank, and like you just kind of have to live with that. And I think some people like some of that could be played as like jokes, but I think there's almost this like weird balance of like horror and comedy kind of like on the same wavelength, but it's almost playing with like horror and like really sad shit, and comedy at like the same time. I think really is interesting.
I wanted to mention, because you say it's sad, the last thing I wanted to talk about is the ending of the movie, because we were talking about how smart he is and how like politically aware this movie is. And when you put all the post 9/11 politics stuff aside and you just look at it as like a climate change movie, there's, like the ending is extremely sad because this thing happens, like the happening happens, right? And if you look at it as a metaphor for climate change, it happens in this one like distinct area of the country. And then it just ends, and then everything like goes on, and then the ending is just it happening in another place, which like is just so clearly like the best metaphor you can make for climate change, because it's just all of these outbursts of climate disasters happening all over the planet and people just not really caring one after the other until, you know, it's too late eventually, which like, yeah, when you say it's sad, it's just like most of his movies are pretty hopeful. This one is just kind of like, oh, this is just going to keep happening over and over again until we actually like do something about it. Like you guys survived that first one, and there's just going to be more.
One thing I love about film is like listening to people talk about movies they love, because I know we're not going to agree on M. Night, we're just not, but like listening to the three of you like genuinely like love this man and his movies just like warms my heart, because like that's the way I talk about other filmmakers, and just listening to you guys just defend the shit out of this man is just very heartwarming at how much you like love his filmography.
Do you want to say where we have it in his ranking?
Second to last.
I have it 9th, but I have it a 3 stars, so I think it's okay.
It's too high.
Yeah, for me, there's 2 M. Night movies that I kind of like. I'm just gonna like remove myself, obviously, other than the ones I haven't seen. But The Happening and Old are the 2 that like I can't really speak on, because The Happening was like the perfect storm for me to not like it, because this is the first M. Night movie I ever saw, and it was when my fiance at the time, girlfriend but not fiance, were in Universal Studios, and we were like a whole day. We were like walking around the park, like super tired. Got back to our hotel, and we're like, let's just throw on a movie. And we did, like, this was when like it probably like just released on Netflix, so it's like the classic, like you open Netflix, it's like the big banner movie. So like, sure, throw it on. I've never been like a huge Mark Wahlberg guy. I mean, I love him in like Boogie Nights.
Nobody should be a huge Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah. and I really don't like Zoe Deschanel. Like I'm not a New Girl guy like at all. So like, this is like,
New Girl's so fun though.
I know it's a hot take. It's whatever. New Girl and Friends are both just like incredibly mid. To me,
I can't.
No,
I think Friends is so much worse than New Girl.
Oh,
Okay,
stop.
But
this is great.
But so basically, it's like 2 actors I don't love. M. Night, like I literally have never seen a movie of his, so I had no clue what to expect, and I was just exhausted from the day of like walking around the park the whole time. So right now I have it 1 star. I don't know if that's an excuse, and if I rewatch it, it still could be a 1 star. But yeah, like literally, like that's why I just didn't really talk to him. That's because like this, my opinion doesn't really matter.
No, that was a glimpse of what the Looks Like a Movie podcast is like when we all agree on the movie.
It's my number.
I would
3
be
for
interested
him.
to see you rewatch it, Tyler, because I do think you'd probably enjoy it more.
I think it's kind of a wild movie to be the first M. Night someone watches.
Yeah, what is so much of like him? It's style heavy for what he's doing.
That's crazy. Tyler, did you watch movies as a kid? Like, did you watch movies growing up and stuff?
Yeah, but some reason M. Night. I mean, like, what M. Night movie really appeals to a kid though?
Like The Sixth Sense. I watched the movie when I was really
I
young.
watched The
my-
Sixth Sense. And
This was my first M. Night movie as
I
well.
avoided any. Dude, I was like the most chicken person ever. Like to me as a kid, like that was probably
Okay,
like
that makes
Insidious
sense.
level to me.
I
Like,
remember.
okay.
Like my parents, like I was watching Shutter Island with my parents as a kid when I was like young, and like the opening scene started, and they were going to that insane asylum, and I like started hyperventilating and went upstairs. Like this is too much for me. Shutter Island, like I'm out, guys. Like almost started crying in my family's living room. Like this is too intense for me, guys.
I remember watching The Happening. When did that came out? What, 07?
2008.
2008.
Yeah, it was 07,
So
08.
yeah, what was that? I was like 12, so I wasn't even that young. But I remember sitting in the living room with my parents watching The Happening, and the scene comes on where everyone like just walks off a building.
Yeah.
And I remember watching that scene,
That shit rocks.
traumatized, and I was like, I'm going to my room.
I actually had the exact same experience. I had this was also my first M. Night movie, because I had this on Blu-ray and I put it in my PlayStation, and I remember watching that scene when everybody jumps off the building, and I was like, this movie's terrifying. And I was like 8 years old or 9 years old or whatever. I was like, damn, that's actually really fucking scary.
I remember because the shot. You know what? I'll praise
Yeah.
M. Night. The shot of that is really cool because like the camera is like right underneath, so people are just heading straight towards the camera.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting there like a traumatized 12-year-old. I'm like, I should not be watching this movie right now.
Well, that covers The Happening. I think we all knew going into this that was going to be the one that was going to be the most dense for discussion. So we're going to talk about it the most. So I'm happy we spent a good amount of time on it.